I'm David Price. I was in the Army for 14 years on active duty. I was a 35 mic human intelligence collector. So the word veteran to me is somebody who served, obviously. I think, and maybe I'm not alone in this, but I think a lot of people kind of, there's like grades of it, like a veteran who served in combat versus like a veteran who never deployed or like only did garrison time. Me personally, and maybe I'm the asshole, but if you didn't make it out of basic training, I don't think you're a veteran. If you got chaptered out of AIT, because like if you never actually went to a duty station, like to me that doesn't count. But yeah, to me somebody who like actually served. For me, like memories that really like stick out, like, cause 14 years you get, you know, a lot of memories. It's kind of hard to pinpoint one, but it's I think the ones that I think had the biggest impact on me would be like the silly, crazy nonsense we used to get away with in the barracks, like hanging out, getting just hammered drunk, and the dumb stuff we would do, and you know, and that's kind of how, like, I remember showing up to Fort Drum for the first time, and like there was a party that night, and like I had just gotten into my barracks room and I didn't even set up my bed, and yeah, it was that was wild. There must have been 30 people packed into that like barracks room. I have no idea how that worked. It was insane, but just that like immediate sort of like, all right, you're on the team. You're a part of this like little brotherhood we got. Just immediately like, all right. And if you were a shithead, like we let you know like real fast, so that you could fix it. And then it was those like in between moments, if that makes sense. The like having a coffee and a cigarette, like right when you wake up and the sun's coming up over the mountain or something, right before the rockets come in. It's like that in between space, or like telling jokes after a firefight with like the guys, like we made it out, we're all right. It's like that. It's like the in between space. Like nothing was going on for this like 2 minutes, and that was ours. When I became an NCO, like those moments that I think had the biggest impact was like, you know, you get a soldier and he was like a screw up or a fuck up, something was wrong with this kid, and then helping him get better, like watching that soldier grow, kind of like coach and mentor that guy so that he wasn't a shithead anymore, and like that felt really, really good. And when I was teaching at the 10 course at Huachuca, you get a soldier who just like wasn't grasping kind of like the core of our job and like what it means to be a human collector, and then having like working with them over and over and over again in class, and then like doing a study hall, and then finally finding a phrasing or a way that like I could watch it happen. Like they'd be sitting there and they'd be confused still, and then that you could see it in their eyes, that light bulb would click, and it was like, he's got it, he's gonna be all right. And that was amazingly rewarding to me. That's probably the best thing I've ever done in the Army. Like, it's always fun to like shoot stuff and blow shit up, right? Like, I love going to the range. I like, you know, popping claymores as much as the next guy, but actually like watching a soldier finally get it was the best thing I've ever done with my life. With you know, kind of sifting through everything, I think there's a part of my brain that's never going to leave Afghanistan. Like, I'm always going to live in some hole in the ground on the mountains in Afghanistan, in those valleys. Like, I'm never leaving that place. And the desert in Kandahar, like there's always, I'm still finding sand in old boots that I should have thrown away a long time ago. I don't know. Sometimes the funny stuff jumps out depending on the day. Uh, Sometimes, like those weird conversations you have at the smoke pit. Um, I got years of that stuff, and it's kind of hard to sift through. I try to remember the funny stuff, um, especially when I'm thinking about guys that are gone, because I don't want to remember them that way. Um, but with all of it, it's all kind of tainted by this sort of like deep regret and sadness that's never going to leave. It's because you lose a guy, and it's like with this job, it's like, well, what didn't I find out? Like, who didn't I talk to? What did I leave out? What did I miss? And so there's that guilt that's always coming, and that's sort of hard to kind of parse from the rest of it. But some of the stories they're hilarious. There's great friends that I still am close with today, from all different walks of life in the military. I got CB friends now. I've got a couple guys in the soft community that I communicate with regularly still. Guys I went to basic and AIT with that I still talk to, and they kind of keep all that alive. But I don't know. I really don't. I can't just say like this memory always jumps out. It really depends on the day and what else is going on. We had this S2 guy. We got attached, or like fell under the S2 because they were like, "Oh, you're intel, like you're in the S2, right?" Like with an infantry battalion, because they don't really have a concept always of what we do, or the experience that they had with prior collectors was negative, and so they're like, "All right, like you're with the S2, sit in the corner and color, like we don't need you." And so you kind of had to prove yourself over and over again with them. One of my better memories is we got attached to an infantry battalion, and we were constantly looking for ways to train up with them and like get involved and kind of be a part of that team, because it's a super different world, like MI and the infantry and the combat arms stuff. And we went to, they were doing a expert and EIB run, expert infantry badge, and you got to be a first time go at like I think it's like 32 stations or something. And so we're like, "Hey, like we want to do this with you," and they were like, "Oh, you're mine, like you can't hack it, with the ruck and all those tasks and everything we got to do." And they were kind of hard on us because we also had a female on our team. But I think out of the like 500 guys in this infantry battalion, like 30 made it, and everybody on our team made it. And so like all this, I have never seen a sergeant major so pissed off and embarrassed at his own guys, because he pulled first. I'm a petite man, I'm not a big guy, and he pulled me and the female up in front of the entire battalion, and he was like, "You're telling me these MI pukes are better infantrymen than you?" And he was proud of us. Like he was proud of us, but like, man, he was so pissed off at his own guys that busted it. And that was really cool though. But like, we didn't have I think because of that, like we didn't have issues later on, like when we actually hit ground and country, because they already knew that we could keep up, shoot, move, and communicate, which is kind of what the most important thing is. And so that was really cool that I got to do that. I did a spur ride with the Cav when we got attached to them. Crushed that, felt really good. Got the silver spurs, the golden spurs in a box at home. That was really cool that I got to do that stuff with that guys, because again, it kind of got around those initial issues of like, "Oh, you're MI, like you can't keep up." And then every time I showed up, like then they started seeking us out, like, hey, we're doing this, do you want to come? And that, I think building that bridge was kind of one of the more important things we did as collectors. I don't know, there's the sad stuff in there too. Um, Firefights. I remember I was maybe, I think it might have been my first or second patrol. Like it was like right after we hit the ground. Um, uh, we got kind of held up in this like little canyon because there's only one road, right? Like so you're always supposed to try to take a different way back than you come in, but there wasn't another road to take. Like it's this way up. So you get caught in those canyons. They'd wait for us to drive in and then put the IED in behind us so that we would hit it. And I remember because we would dismount kind of. So the IED hit and then knocked out, I think it was a second or third truck. So we were kind of caught between, we couldn't back up, and we couldn't go forward. And, they would make a point to hit us when we were in the low ground so that they could just point down. Like, you ever played that carnival game with all the balloons? Like, if there's a bunch of balloons in one spot, like, you're gonna hit something. So, you don't even have to have great aim. Like, and the point was to just shoot at us till they ran out of ammo and then, back to their, wherever. I was pushing up to provide support to the down truck. I was a saw gunner because again I'm a little man, so they said here's this giant gun that's heavy and hard to carry. It's like, with all the ammo, it was probably like 30 pounds. But after walking with it for 10 miles, it gets heavy. The Afghans were moving ahead of us, the Afghan army guys, and this rocket just came in and annihilated these dudes. And I flew back into the truck behind me, like 5-10 feet, and I was out for a solid minute. And I remember thinking, like, when I hit the ground, it's just like I can't hear anything and I can't see anything except like dust and I'm like, this is it. This is how I go. This is where I'm gonna die. Just got to get back up, keep shooting, and then, I had a buddy we get up to this truck and get up there with my saw, and I'm just like, all right, cool, they're shooting up there, and just laying down that fire. Another mortar kind of hit, so the truck kind of cocked this way, like that herringbone, that fishbone thing they do, where they kind of zigzag. So the truck, after hitting, kind of slid a little bit, and then a mortar had struck right in front of that. So we were at the truck kind of behind it, and I was aiming up into the mountains where they were shooting at us from, and this mortar hit just above it. They're in front of the down truck. I'm shooting and shooting and shooting. And you listen, right, for where your guys are by where their rifles, right, because you can't really hear anything else. Like that rifles talk, right? So I'm listening to that, and I stop hearing it. Shrapnel had come up, and he was a big dude, so the gap was probably about 2.5 inches, but right between the bottom of the armor plate and the belt, right? And these little bits of shrapnel just went in there. And it just ripped them open. So like things kind of calmed down. They ran out of ammo, and then I fall in with the doc because dude's down. I remember fucking packing this dude's guts back on top of him, and obviously like he was in shock, so like he wants to look at it, and he wants to touch it. So I'm sitting on his shoulders with my knees, and I'm holding his head so he can't see it, he can't touch it anymore. And Doc's trying to pack him up so we get him on a bird, get him out of there. And I mean, God bless Doc, but fuck, like there's only so much he can do, right? When those hot little razors hit. and you're sitting there and the kid's freaking out, right? He's in shock, crying, going nuts, and so you got to tell him that same lie you tell everybody else, like, hey man, like you're gonna be okay, everything's fine, and like, I don't know, I feel like I got too many of those stories. I got a lot of great friends and funny, crazy stuff that happened, but again, it's kind of that deep regret and that sadness. That's because I had funny stories with him. Um, like he, he passed out on a ruck march because he filled his Camelback with fucking Mountain Dew because he's an idiot. um, but man, and you gotta sit there and you gotta smile and look him in the eyes as he's crying and say it's okay. But like, it's not. Like, I'm not a doctor, but I've seen enough shit to know what's about to happen here, and eventually, like, you sit there and you hold his hand and he squeezes you one last time, and that's it. And it's like, well, shit, like, what else can I do? And you just feel so powerless. It's. I think that's probably where a lot of those regrets come from. Is that it's not regret that like I screwed up so much as like why couldn't I do more? Um, like what else? I mean, there's nothing. Like I can objectively look at that situation and say there ain't shit I could have done. Doesn't mean I didn't want to, or that I wish I could have. And it's that stuff that you can never do. You can never fix, right? Like it's. Mom or dad's got cancer. Like, I can't do shit about that, but I wish I could. And so life gives you that shit sandwich, and you just gotta fucking eat it. Because there's nothing else to do, and it sucks. And I think that's where a lot of that sort of pain comes from. That's the thing, too. Like, you can't. I don't have a lot of friends, because who the fuck can I talk to that was there and knows where I'm coming from? Like, who else is, like, you don't want to sit there and dump your baggage on somebody who's got no idea what the fuck you're talking about. Even with me, like, I've done, work to try to, like, move past this stuff, not let it dominate, because I had a really low point, where I was like, I couldn't bottle anything else inside, right? It didn't stop me from trying. Like, I drank a lot, but I hit a point where I was like, either I'm gonna get help, or I'm gonna be that guy in the news who climbed a clock tower, because I fucking couldn't anymore, right? Like, I hit that point, and it was such a weird realization to know it's like I'm the asshole in this scenario, right? So I started, talking to people and trying to get help, and even with other veterans, like there was this disconnect between my experiences being forward, patrolling all the time with this infantry battalion, and these guys who spent most of the time at the flagpole. Like, again, not to shit on their experiences, but there was that disconnect, and even guys that I served with, like, they weren't on that op. So, like, not to say they didn't love that dude, didn't experience other shit, but I can connect with those guys more. But you feel so alone all the time that it's hard to talk about this stuff, because who else was there except for the guy that died? Normally I'd say I could call Doc, but Doc shot himself in the head because he couldn't fucking handle it anymore. That's why I try to remember the funny stuff, because if I stop laughing, I'm gonna break down and cry. Like, if I don't laugh about it, I'm gonna cry. So I've got this. I think this is also a common thing with guys, veterans that have been there. Is that, like, you get a real twisted, like, dark sense of humor. Like, shit that should never be funny becomes really hilarious. Because if you don't laugh, you're gonna cry. So I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to laugh. I can look at my service, and there were obviously like awful, shitty experiences, um, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I don't regret my service. I loved serving my country. Um, I felt, I feel great about it. I learned a lot. I developed a sense of like discipline and pride and self confidence that I don't think I would have had otherwise. I had a friend, as far as like the why I even joined, part of it was, my parents had joined. I mean, um, my father was, my parents met in the Navy. Um, my grandfather was a Marine in World War II. My grandmother was a nurse in Vietnam and Korea. Um, so like, and I could tie family history back to the War of the Roses in 1066. My grandma really likes genealogy. Um, and then on my father's side, at least, like to the War of the Roses in 1066, like with Hadrian's Wall fighting the Picts and all that. And I tie my mother's side to the first, families that started and commanded the Hessian mercenary armies in the late 1600s. So there's that kind of like lineage drive to it. I remember in school watching September 11th happen. And that was the first time America had seen war on its soil in over, 150 years. For the first time, like people had to face it. I don't remember what I did the day before September 11th. I don't remember anything about that day. It was a normal day, and it was the last one I had. Because everything after that, because all of my high school was the first, 4 or 5 years of war, right? Like looking for, we got Saddam, like Time Magazine was the United States soldier as the person of the year. Like it was on the news all the time. It was everywhere. And there was that famous photo of the Marine after the Battle of Fallujah, just sitting there like blood and mud caked on his face, just sitting there like dazed out of his skull because he's been fighting for the last 36 hours with a cigarette dangling out of his mouth. It was everywhere. And it was so. After September 11th, like everything changed. America was a different place overnight. So I'd like to think that part of the reason I joined was because I want my family to go back and to having those days of September 10th. I want that for my family. Again, I want that for everyone. To have a world that we're not fighting all the time. I know things are shitty. They're not always great. Most of the time they're not. But everything's going to be all right. There's this, the pandemic's fucking ruining people's lives, businesses, families. People are dying. It sucks. But eventually, like, everything's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. And that's kind of how I'm approaching everything now. It's like, sucks right now, but it's okay. It's gonna be okay again. It's not okay right now. Maybe in this moment, like everything's okay, but checking tomorrow, everything might be super fucked up. But right now, everything's okay for a little bit. The election, people are freaking out about that, like what's going to happen. The pandemic, everybody, there's stuff to legitimately be concerned about, and you should be informed and concerned about those things, but it's going to be okay. Because I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. I might not be okay right now all the time, but I'm going to be okay at the end of everything.